Well, it's a crisis when you have any number of shootings taking place because it's a loss of life. It is a traumatizing of neighborhoods and of people. And so I certainly have treated it with a great sense of urgency every single day that I've had this job, and certainly every single day this year. I should say the number of homicides in the city is down quite sharply this year over last, but we can never be satisfied that we've reached a point until we get to zero where we've got the problem solved. I've spoken to the police chief this morning, and we have these conversations, and I ask him in each and every conversation, is there anything more we could be doing? Is there anything more that you're not receiving by way of support from the city to do the job you have to do? And, he's frustrated, but I think the very matter we're discussing at the City Council today, which is some support we provided already and is being used as we speak to try and deal with what is a very challenging situation, is what we're doing. I'll say this. I've talked repeatedly about the three legs on the stool. Support for the police, which we're discussing and hopefully approving at City Council today. It's already been extended to them, and they're underway making use of those resources. Secondly is changes to the law, and I'll come back to that in a moment. And thirdly is investments in neighborhoods and kids and families, which we're also discussing at the City Council today, and where I'm heartened by the news that some of the federal parties have made this a priority with significant additional investments, some of which will flow through to Toronto. But I want to speak about the laws for a minute. I've spoken often about guns, and that is, of course, a serious problem. But when I was speaking with the police chief last night, very late last night, we got into quite a discussion, which is not the first time we've had it, about bail. And I just want to reiterate something that I don't know when I talk about this, when he talks about this, when other people talk about this, whether people actually get it. But we have instances he outlined as part of his report earlier this week where you have people that were out on bail on gun charges that are then found to be not in compliance with their bail conditions and are rearrested again on gun charges. And this is happening over and over again. And I don't know what it's going to take to get the message across to all of those involved, both the lawmakers, but also, I say respectfully, the judges. And I saw earlier on when I commented on this a few weeks ago that, some Criminal Lawyers Association said this was nonsense. It is not nonsense when you see actual people being arrested in the last 2 or 3 weeks who were out on bail already on firearms charges, and they're charged again with possessing firearms. And the police chief tells me that there are people who otherwise we need to count on to give us information in the neighborhoods on these kinds of incidents that are taking place, these tragic incidents, who in some respects are reluctant. I won't say they're cynical because he didn't use that word, but they're reluctant to speak to us. That reluctance in part created by the fact that they can see that anybody they might provide information on are back on the streets within hours of being arrested. It's frustrating for the police who are trying to do their job. It's frustrating for me, who is answering for this terrible toll that's being taken on our streets every day. And I'm sure it's frustrating for everybody involved. And I just don't get why the community's voice is not being heard on issues like this, because it's sort of fallen to a secondary position behind the discussion of guns, which is a very important issue. But this one is important as well, in that we just have people that are walking the streets who shouldn't be. They should be kept in custody pending their trial because they've shown that they have no regard for public safety, no regard for the fact that they've been found once to be carrying firearms, even if not convicted. And I think the only answer is to keep them in custody.